And as I mentioned, most companies that end up leaders in the fabless industry start out as services companies. Even Qualcomm started out as an R&D company with services, design services, consulting services, and grew into a product company with CDMA technology and the ability to leverage it in chipsets as it evolved as a company. Well, India's built a tremendous foundation for a fabless future with a host of design services companies and now more and more IP companies that are making their mark around the world. So it's caused an increasing number of truly fabless chip companies to emerge. What about the future growth, and how do we enhance that number and their impact on the semiconductor world? Well, first of all, the economic trends are in India's favor. If we go back to the year 1 AD, the first 2,000 years almost were dominated by movement of the center of gravity of the economies to the west. Since 1950, the direction has reversed, and the motion is toward the east, now making its way toward India and toward the other countries in Asia. India's foundation includes leadership with the most influential design teams in the world. If you look at the design centers that exist in India, there are over 1,000 R&D design centers working at the leading edge. If you look at the evaluations of the most attractive outsourcing locations in the world, the interesting thing is that what India leads in is the availability of resources and skills. They don't lead in the lowest cost. They don't even lead in the best business environment. India leads in critical skills, and that, more than anything else, is what brings companies to invest in India. Engineering and R&D activity continues to grow. 18 of the top 20 U.S. semiconductor companies have design centers in India today, and 20 European corporations set up engineering R&D centers in India within the last year. India has the richest pool of creative engineering resources and educational institutions in the world. One of the things that everyone here knows about, but which people in the United States continually marvel at, is the whole IIT system, not because it represents so much of India's educational system. In fact, those of us who've worked in India have found that India has a rich infrastructure of educational institutions far beyond the IITs. It's just that people in the U.S. who have struggled to get their children into the best universities in the U.S. marvel at the statistics associated with the IITs, where 1.25 million people show as candidates, only 150,000 take the advanced exam, only 20,000 qualify, 14,000 to interview, roughly 10,000 available seats, and a substantial portion of those don't even graduate, and yet it represents such a selective set of people that people in the U.S. are continually impressed when someone tells them they have attended IIT. Well, the infrastructure of people that work in India is changing, and it's changing for the good as the experience level grows. So if we look just at the last few years, we look at the profile of the workforce from 0 to 4 years experience to 4 to 8 to 8 to 14, and you see the inevitable demographic that the workforce in India is becoming more and more experienced, which creates greater and greater value for those who want to take advantage of that workforce. There's a growing pool of angel investors in India, and also investors in the West who want to bring their money back to India to invest it. India has experienced such rapid economic gains for a decade and has this young and fast-growing population, so that in 2012, the industry saw $25.5 billion of foreign direct investment inflows, with investors still anticipating enormous potential. A quote from A.T. Kearney that makes a business of analyzing where is the best place to invest your money. Venture capital statistics in India are brighter than any other place in the world. If you look at the number of rounds of VC financing, it's growing substantially. You look at the total dollars, and it's growing substantially, while the rest of the world, as I showed earlier, is declining, and the US is declining even more precipitously. So India stands out as a unique opportunity space for investment. So what is missing? What do we need to take us to the step where India becomes a superpower in terms of fabless semiconductor capability? Well, I think it all is wrapped up in this quote from E.E. Times that says, only when Indian engineers are exposed to the full system, top down, can they see where the opportunities to innovate lie along the entire design chain. The E in IESA is a change that draws that meaningful electronic system company into the fold of the Semiconductor Association and forms the basis for product innovation. So one of the lessons most of us have learned in many years in the semiconductor industry is that innovative products are only developed when you bring together the person within the semiconductor company that knows the bag of tricks, that knows all of the unique things we can do with silicon, and put him or her in communication with the person inside the system company, the customer company, who knows needs instead of wants. Most of the world operates with all sorts of intermediate organizations collecting customer requirements and translating them into product needs. And those needs almost always translate as, I want it better, I want it faster, I want it cheaper, or lower power. But the fact is, when you put the two people together and one says, I can't make it faster, but I could do it in parallel, or I can't get everything you want, but I could buffer the signals, then the innovation starts occurring. Then the product definition that creates those winning products of the future occur. But the problem, how do you get those people together? They are shielded in their own corporations because they're very valuable people, and most of the system companies of the world have their roots in the West, in Europe, and in the US, and only recently in the Asian parts of the world. Well, one way to do that is with a virtual connection. And I just cite a few examples, but one of the ones that stands out to me is Basim. Basim was a company that had its founders in the US, its system architectures in the US, but all the work was done here in India. Why? Because they needed those system architects interacting directly with their potential customers in order to get that product definition in a form that would create winning products. Well, that's a way to bring that system expertise together with that design innovator that's doing the chip. It's what you might think of as a virtual communication. And as time goes on, with better and better internet communications, we'll see more and more of that interaction solving some of this problem. But the real solution comes as you bridge that gap and bring those people together in close physical proximity. And that is what we're missing today to take that final step of leadership. Let me show you an example of what happens when that occurs right here in India. So you say, well, I don't have enough system companies to create great products, but we do have designers, a plethora of designers, users, and we have creators of EDA software and hardware. And so when you put those two together, they create innovative products. And over the last 10 years, we had, in my own case at Mentor Graphics, roughly 500 people working on design tool solutions, including emulators. And emulators have suddenly become a necessary tool in designing big chips because simulation can no longer keep up. So the leading edge has all adopted emulation. But right at the same time, a team here in India who had been working on emulation for about 15 years came up with two approaches because they were in close proximity to the designers themselves, one called virtual stimulus, one called test bench acceleration, and they changed the world of emulation so that emulators, instead of being something you have in the laboratory with a bunch of cables plugged into it, became a server that you could use remotely anywhere around the world. And because of test bench acceleration, you could accelerate both the test bench and the design itself. It revolutionized emulation. It didn't do us any harm because our revenue grew an extra 150 million overnight. But the bigger thing was you had the kind of innovation that occurs when you put brilliant people together with brilliant users and they come up with a system that provides a revolutionary change. And in fact, today, the emulator has become the hub of design for leading edge digital technology companies, and virtual peripherals, virtual stimulus is a core to that, as is test bench acceleration. So, lasting differentiation requires an infrastructure. It starts with a skilled set of designers. It has, over time, the ability to develop proprietary intellectual property, which can be marketed, and ultimately grows to having chips. What do you need to make the chip of the future? You need interaction with systems experts, consumer products companies, server companies, networking companies, the people who have a requirement that only the magic of silicon architectural innovation can solve. And with that, we take the next step. To summarize, while the number of new fabless startups has declined substantially in the West during the past decade, the number is growing in India. India has key capabilities to stimulate growth of semiconductor companies, including design services companies, design engineering expertise and innovation, returning entrepreneurs, and an educational system. And finally, direct interaction with equipment or systems companies will complete the product development process and make India a driving force in the world semiconductor and systems business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I would request once again Mr. Ashok Chandik to kindly come over and give him a memento to Dr. Walden Rhines. Well, it's total positive atmosphere here in India. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. Kindly accept a memento. We'll just have a couple of questions in the interest of time, and I'm sure that the speakers will be available offline. Just two questions. Kindly raise your hand. The mic will come to you, and we'll take a couple of questions.